Welcome to Untamed Blossoms, the podcast where we celebrate the wild and beautiful journey of womanhood. We're here to create a space where women can connect, inspire, and uplift each other. Untamed Blossoms is more than just a podcast. It's a movement. It's a gathering of strong, fierce women who are breaking free from society's expectations.
Our mission is to deep dive into the stories of incredible women who have embraced their authenticity, even in the face of adversity. We believe by sharing these stories, we can inspire others to do the same. Join us as we sit down with women from all walks of life who have faced their own struggles and emerged as the most authentic versions of themselves. From entrepreneurs to artists, activists to adventurers, we'll explore their triumphs and tribulations. Together, we'll navigate the challenges of self-discovery, self-acceptance, and self-love.
But Untamed Blossoms is more than just conversations. We're a community that gathers for events, immerses ourselves in the beauty of nature, and supports one another in our personal and professional growth. So whether you're seeking inspiration, looking for a supportive sisterhood, or simply want to hear incredible stories of women blazing their own trails, Untamed Blossoms is here for you. Together, let's embrace our wildness, bloom unapologetically, and rewrite the rules. Welcome to Untamed Blossoms.
Welcome to Untamed Blossoms. We're grateful you're here. I'm your host, Amanda Riley.
And I'm Cristi Riley. Welcome to the pod.
New week, new pod.
New week, new pod. So excited to be here.
How was your last week? What'd you do?
So working on the house things. Septic system is getting fixed and things are moving forward. We went to the auction at the place because a business used to be there. A cabinet maker lived on the property. And so that was fun watching that all go down. My husband was terribly sad we didn't get the tractor. He can't wait to play on his tractor. So yeah, there's that. So we're just inundated in the house things, but having a great time. Yeah. How about you? You had a great trip this last weekend.
Great trip. Went to Marblehead camping, and it was the most fun. Didn't really do anything of like notability, but we just relaxed. Yeah. And I read. There's not a lot of internet there, which is awesome.
Fantastic.
It's really, truly strange when you're used to working like from a device or from your phone. Right. And people communicate, obviously, nonstop these days. So at the campsite itself, I have no service. Like, I'm struggling to even get Spotify to play on the speaker. And the moment I would like leave or like we would go into town or we went to an island, I would just get slammed with like a million notifications. I was like, oh God, people are needing me. I love this. But yeah, it was great.
Good.
Yeah.
It looked like you guys had a great time.
Yeah. Anytime in the sun, I am enjoyable. And Agreed. Today also starts Leo season.
Yes.
So that's exciting. Finally.
Yes. Big energy showing up with this full moon. Big energy.
I like cry all through Cancer season to get here. So.
You're here for it.
I'm here for it.
Here for it to be over. Yeah. All the crying.
Yeah, truly.
For real. Well, we're so excited to have our guest today. And what we're going to talk about is showing up as your authentic self, which is what she's chosen to talk about. And man, have we got some lessons in that.
Absolutely. They will be our guest today, and she's going to talk about also human design and how that helped guide her to this living and showing up authentically. But Cristi and I got a reading from Sarah, as you all may remember from our human design episode.
Episode number 2, Sarah Wren.
Episode number 2. We got our human design read for our business.
Correct. Because we were struggling.
Yeah.
Yeah. You and I, Amanda and I, are fairly creative people. And we have a lot of energy. We're both manifesting generators. So we can come up with the ideas and we also have the energy to make them come to fruition. That's a great thing and a bad thing all at the same time is in the course of her and I knowing we wanted to be in business and talking about Untamed Blossoms, we came up with about, I don't know, how many different versions of that?
At least 7.
At least 7. Direction we're going to go. Should it be a gym? Should it be a women's only gym? Should it be a social gathering? And so we were really struggling with what what direction to take it. And we weren't getting a lot of involvement, even though we know a lot of incredible women in the events that we were planning. We weren't getting a lot of people showing up. And so we were struggling. And so we met with Sarah. And it was one of the most incredible things that we've ever experienced. It was amazingly informative. And then the things that she told us that day seemed wild to us at the time. And then she sent us a document, because that's what Sarah does. She's just amazingly detail oriented and organized, and gives you all the information afterwards, and sent us this lovely document that she put together that not only went through all of the gates for myself and then the same gates for Amanda, but also the gates for Untamed Blossoms. And I looked at it quickly when she sent it, and I was like, oh, it's cool. It's what we talked about a little bit. I didn't really read it in the depth that I needed to read it. And just happened to open it today because I knew that Shay was coming and we were going to talk about sort of how these readings impact us and kind of what we come away with. And I reread that. And since that time, you and I have started the podcast. And wow, everything that she wrote in that document has 1,000% come to fruition.
Yeah.
In what we're doing and how we're doing it, and telling women stories and doing the podcast. It was pretty mind blowing to reread it.
Yeah.
2 months later, and where we're at now. So it was spot on. And I'm so grateful for Sarah and her knowledge base and what she does. And not only is she just, a lot of people can quote unquote read human design. There's apps you can put people's, and I know Shay and I we were talking before this, that she's now looking up everybody's human design, because once you get the bug, you want to know what everybody is around you so that you can kind of understand people better. It gives you quite the layout of folks. And, but it's so fun.
Yeah.
It's so incredible that you get this information, and just having her information come in such a way, like as a therapist.
Yes.
I think is so beautiful. And so,
and clear.
It's very clear and very much in a caring, loving way that she really cares about you. So the information is all done through a lens of love, and it's way more impactful, at least for me, and I think for you guys in our business, than the other readings I've had in human design in the past. So
yeah, and I would say if you're someone who's looking to start a business, or if you started one and you have an LLC, you can literally give Sarah, like we did, the date that we created our LLC, and we have a human design for her, for the business. Right? So you don't have to just do it for yourself or a loved one. If you want to go into business with somebody, or if you have your own, knowing that information, I think, is really powerful, because just like today, going through those things, it was wonderful that she put both of our individuals as well as a business, because what we were also able to see is how you and I are showing up and supporting the business in our own unique ways.
Right.
And that's why this works, because although we're both manifesting generators, we show up and do things differently.
Right.
And that has been really complimentary to the podcast.
Correct.
So
correct. And as well as giving us the shadow things to look for. Our whole session with her was beautiful in that she did warn us that these are the places that you guys can potentially have conflict, and you should be really mindful of those places within your business. Make sure that you're speaking your truth. Make sure that you're speaking when you're frustrated with something. And she just gave us really tangible things that, and part of our shadow, and it was on the form that she sent us as well, is not only our traits and what we bring to it, but also be careful of these things.
Yeah.
these are the shadow aspects of those gates, and those can show up. And so be mindful of that as you move forward. And that's also extremely helpful.
Yeah. So for today's guest, Shay will be here, and she's going to talk about her experience with human design, a little bit about, the more intricate parts of human design and how that showed up for her. But then also, she's an artist. She's an incredible artist. If you all remember Haley from episode 1, Shay is one of the other friends that I've mentioned that I have a lot of art, from, and just like incredible to see how you can pair your passion, and hers is art, with understanding yourself and your direction and where you're going in terms of human design. So without further ado, Shay, welcome to the pod.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Of course. So tell us, tell us your journey with art. Tell us your journey through creativity, I would say.
I think my journey with art started like a lot of kids, where you receive that art suitcase as a gift. It's got pastels, markers, pencils, a sharpener. I guess legally a sharpener, but it never sharpened anything. And you have that, and everyone says you love to draw, so they'll give you those, and then you get as a millennial, I received a lot of those fuzzy art posters as a kid that you could color, like space cats, or
you turn into artwork for your walls.
Yes. As an adult with a lot of like sensory issues, I couldn't possibly touch one of those ever again. But as a kid, I really enjoyed that, and I kind of just knew that creativity was like my best friend from the beginning. I knew that it was always my thing to look forward to. I know that looking forward to things is something that like helps people work through a lot of stuff, and getting to do art in any capacity was always my saving grace, for lack of a better phrase. I always was able to say, okay, I had a bad day, but tonight I'm going to go home and I'm going to work on this painting, or I'm going to draw, or I've got these new markers or these new paints that I want to swatch. And if you're not familiar with swatching, when you get new materials, it often comes with a card, so you can test out all the colors and you know what you're getting. So even stuff like that, I would look forward to, just always being creative. And growing up, I thought that I would have an art job. I would go to art school and I would have an art job. And then at some point in high school, I got a bug in my brain that said, if you do art, you'll never go outside. Okay. And I was like, I couldn't possibly do this. I don't want to spend my life inside. Yes, I do. I'm horrible in the heat. I love being inside. So I thought I would be a nurse, and I went to school for nursing, and I was like, okay, I'm going to study science. I'm going to learn all of this. I failed biochemistry 3 times. And as someone with like very high GPA in high school, gifted classes, all of that, I was really discouraged. I thought, well, if I can't be a nurse, I can't do anything. And then I thought, well, I guess I'll just give up and go back to art. And that didn't feel right at the time either. So I flailed around a lot, and I think I might be nearing the end of my flailing. But I'm trying to make art a more everyday part of my life. And I feel like I am one thing away from quitting my job and living in a tree and making art all the time.
So what you're saying is you can make art outside, it turns out.
It turns out you can, and you probably should. It's really good. Good for you. I'm excited. Last night I charged some water under the full moon, and I was Sarah actually recommended doing some watercolor with that, and I thought, I love watercolor. I love the moon. Why haven't I done these things before? So I'm really excited. That is my thing I'm looking forward to this week, is that I have a whole bucket of moon water that's only mine. Not a lot of people are coming to take my moon water. I just am afraid my husband's going to pour it on a plant or the cat or something. I don't know.
Well, so before we get into more of the human design, I know you're really into astrology and things like that as well. So what piqued your interest about astrology, or like the spiritual realm, I guess you could say? And where kind of are you at now? And I would love to know your big 3 as well.
So I'm a Taurus sun, a Sagittarius moon, and a Cancer rising. I enjoy crying through Cancer season, actually, to sort of like comfort myself in a bath of my own tears. Astrology is something I thought was always very cool. I love learning different ways to identify myself. So, give me a quiz, some set of rules, and I'll tell you exactly who I am. And astrology I felt seen. But then as a teenager and in my early 20s, I thought, okay, well, this isn't real. None of this is real because I can't see it, right? So then I started paying more attention to it. And I noticed, I would say probably 5 or 6 years ago, when I started working with a lot of like-minded people, I was able to sort of like delve into the intricacies of like, okay, my Mars is in Aquarius, so when I get upset, I get super weird. Sorry, Aquariuses. But I never handle anything the same way. So like, I'm a Gemini Venus. So in relationships, I'm in or I'm out. I can't stand the person, or I can't live without them. So just all of these ways to navigate through the world, because I don't feel like I was equipped with all of those nuclear family ways to acclimate to my surroundings. I didn't have like a standard home unit. We didn't really go to church there. And when I did, I wasn't feeling it. So all of this, I felt seen and I felt understood. And so I just continued to follow that without I guess, I don't know what you would call like a nuclear upbringing blueprint.
Yeah. And then you met Sarah through Amanda?
Yes, I met Sarah through Amanda, and I learned about human design when we were working out. Amanda told me about her human design reading, and I heard Amanda say things about herself that she had just learned, but I had already known. And I thought that was really interesting because sometimes you really are too close to yourself. You're too much in the way. So I thought I have to hear the things. Like I have to hear things about myself because I need to know how to move forward. I'm currently work at a corporate job, and I've learned a lot there, and I've been there longer than I've been at any other job. But the more time passes, the more I feel like it's not where I'm meant to be. I'm looking up a ladder I don't really want to climb. Mm. So I'm leaning more into what feels like me and what feels right. And then meeting with Sarah told me that I was doing everything right. And I said, I want to know what my purpose is. And she said that it's not my business. Which I thought was both rude and really helpful because I was so focused on what I needed to do. What is the right answer? I was going to sit down, and at the end of this astrological quiz, Sarah was going to tell me I needed to be a lawyer or I needed to do something. And she said, well, it's the universe will figure it out. It's sort of just going on with or without your involvement. So don't worry about it. And whenever anybody tells me not to worry about something, I'm immediately going to worry about it. But when Sarah said it, I thought, okay, well, if the universe says, then I should probably listen. If I'm not going to listen to any other thing, myself included, maybe the universe. And I feel like fully equipped to level up as a human being.
So what did she tell you, or what did you come up with together as your human design type? And let's start there before we go into more of the learnings from that.
So I'm a manifestor, which I know you've both discussed being manifesting generators, which sounds from my side very cool to have both the idea and the energy to complete it. But how do you ever feel done? As just a manifestor, I felt finally like I had permission to continue having ideas without the shame of not executing all of them. I carry around a lot of shame for ideas that I don't see through to the end, or projects I start that I don't finish, things like that. And this felt like, well, that's not what you're supposed to do. So it felt like, oh, okay, well, let's stop being mad about it because I'm not supposed to be doing that anyway. Another thing that wasn't my business. So I don't know whose business it is. TBD.
Not yours.
Not mine. The universe will figure that part out. Yeah. So I'm a manifestor. My inner authority is emotional, and with little bits of information that I remember accurately. The top gates that I have, unconscious and conscious, they're all low numbers. And I was learning that my gene key is, I don't want to get too into it, but I feel feelings so much and all the time without stopping. I am in a constant state of emotions, which also felt like more permission to be okay. I think I did all this work. I wanted to go to therapy. I learned about myself. I tried so hard to grow out of all the stuff I thought was wrong with me. And I was trying to grow out of who I am. And so I wanted to stop doing that.
And where do you think that started? I think that's an interesting conversation, is to kind of, can you identify, or maybe you can't, but I feel like I can look back at my childhood and be like, I let go of self repeatedly.
Yes.
Right.
I can't tell you when I first did, but I knew pretty early on, just growing up with my mom and I in the home, just the two of us, realizing that we were really different, and she always wanted me to be different than I was being. So my personality became to anticipate who she wanted me to be and just be that person. Subconsciously is probably like a path of least resistance, right? To just make it out of being a kid, which I think is the hardest thing. When you're a kid, you're like, oh no, it's always going to be like this. So I just was conditioned to be who I thought people wanted me to be. And then I never really talked about who I was because I thought, well, that's the broken stuff. That's the stuff that's not supposed to be there. So you'll grow out of it, or you'll go to therapy enough times to where it's not a thing anymore. But that's not the case, it turns out. So.
No, I think we continue to have that theme with almost every woman we talk to, right? Every podcast is, I really sort of let go of who I was for one or a plethora of reasons, and then find myself now in this age going, well, I need to reconnect with her. And, we've talked about, I know that in our solo podcast, we talked about our child selves. What about your meeting with Sarah and your human design, that was there a moment where you were like, wow, I see her?
Yes, absolutely. There is something Sarah showed me, and it's like the way that your energy flows, whether it be in a zigzag line or, up and down. Mine is like an individual passion. So it looks like a heartbeat, like that you would see on a monitor. And when Sarah showed me that, I was able to show her that I have that actually already tattooed on my body.
Wow.
And I got this tattoo when I was 18. A friend had passed away due to suicide in my first year of college, but he had also gone to my high school, so I knew him very well. And we all went to get tattoos because as like a newly free teenager, like we're writing stuff and it's permanent, like this is who I am. This is what I care about. And to just like look down and see that. And then I showed Sarah, and it was the thing that she brought up in my post-meeting paperwork or documents that I was sent, is that she couldn't believe that I had that tattooed on myself. But what's great about it is that it means that I'm supposed to do things only when I'm in the mood to, which I thought was wrong. I thought it was lazy. I thought that was bad. But when I show up in places that I'm not in the mood to be, as both of you have seen in one capacity or another, it's not great for me. And apparently I have I can affect other people without meaning to. So it's better when I just go places that I want to go, or I just do things that I want to do, or I'm in the mood for it. And that any long period of rest in between is like required. It's just as important as the burst of activity, because without it, no.
How has that changed your like friendships and relationships when it comes to like, people expect a certain thing, right? And especially whether you're people pleasing or just living inauthentically, you end up doing things that aren't aligned with who you're supposed to be or how you're supposed to show up.
Yeah.
So how has knowing that impacted those relationships? I think that's a big part of all of this, is once you learn, it's hard to unknow that that's how you operate. And then you have the huge lift or responsibility of retraining people around you to say like, hey, I know I was showing up this one way, but for this experience to be better for both of us, this is how I'm going to have to do it.
I think the most perfect example of that is that I'll never go on a question mark number, like 10-mile hike with only All Trails as our guide ever again. I signed up to go on a hike just because I didn't have FOMO. I really wanted to be included. And I was like, yeah, if my physical, like if my being tired is the only problem, I could push through that. Wow. I want you all to know you weren't on that hike with me, that I hiked 7 miles maybe, and then I did have to sit down, and I said, bring the car around to wherever this road is, because we're losing the daylight, and this is where I die. I'm like, I can't do anything. I called off work for the next 2 days after that. It was I went on a hike on a Sunday. What? And I wasn't a person again until Wednesday morning. I'm like, no one speak to me. I'll never do that again. And it's because I just didn't want to be left out of something I thought would be really fun. And now I'm like, I hope you all have the best time. Never call me, just send me pictures. Like, I don't want to go. How many times did I ask you how much further we had?
It was
and how many times were you honest?
Couldn't have been at all in those moments, but I do think it's just like a beautiful thing as your friend to observe, is like when you realize that like by you showing up authentically wherever we are, right, then I can better expect and not expect things from you.
Yeah.
You can only know and do with what you're aware of. And now I feel like you're much more honest about what you do or don't want to do. And it's much easier to be a good friend.
Yeah. And I didn't want people to think I was like not good at something or wasn't interested in something, and then they wouldn't call anymore. Like they wouldn't want to hang out if I wasn't doing all of the same things. But I think that like learning the differences in my friends has been easier to do throughout this as well. Like where were you showing up? Where you were just sort of like just clocking into this friendship, really, just kind of phoning it in, just putting it on speaker, sitting down and just letting them talk and not really absorbing anything. Which honestly, I realized that the end of the time I was in communication with my mother, I realized I did that a lot. So I thought, oh, if I'm doing this in friendships, I know what's next. And it's, please don't talk to me anymore. So that's tough.
Yeah.
But I have more time to just like give myself permission to be myself and not managing what you think other people's emotions are. Like not having a running tally of the times you might have let somebody down or the projects you didn't finish. Not having that like mental load is very nice. I'm sleeping better.
Have you been able to do that? You've been able to incorporate what she's told you and really been let
sure.
yourself off the hook in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like if I don't want to go to the gym in the morning, I just won't go. Versus going and being like, rather not be here. And it's like, well, then don't go if you don't want to be here. I think I thought I would let you, Amanda, down because we would go so much and it would just be the two of us, that if I stopped, then you would feel like sad or I don't, who could say?
And now knowing my human design, you know that, and I've always known this, but it's good to read it out loud. I love groups.
You do.
I want to be in a group setting as much as possible. And I always thought it was a personality flaw. Like, why am I
like you didn't like being alone or something?
Yeah, but I always loved everybody individually, but I really love a group situation. And so I think what's interesting is I was operating in a place where I didn't want to invite too many people to the gym because I didn't want you to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, because I'm not as much of a group girly.
But now it's almost like it can give you permission if you don't want to go to not feel this, but we're both operating authentically.
Yep. So it's like more, it's more, it just flows better. And there's a little bit of time where I'm like, oh, you missed a day at the gym this week. Like oh man, your muscles are disappearing as we speak, which feels so real when you're looking at yourself, and it's not, because then you can go back and you're like, oh, I'm lifting the same weight here in this exercise. Just your mind can be very cruel and really targeted. It has all of your secrets. But I will say meeting with Sarah was amazing, because it was like hearing you talk about meeting with her. It was like she can see behind doors you're not even aware you have closed, which I think is something that's like really profound. She said something to me during my session about how a certain channel or a certain gate was populated, full. I'm not sure if the word to use.
It's fully connected to the next one.
Yes, and it was about how I am focused on timelines a lot. And I had never really told anybody that before, where if I'm sitting at a traffic light, I wonder, what if I didn't make this light? Or what if I had gotten in the car earlier? Or I think about stuff like that like all the time. I'm not close with either of my parents, and I haven't seen my dad in a long time. So I would think, oh, how were we ever like really close to each other, but we didn't know it? Or things like that. I think about that a lot. And you could just see it on her face. She was just like, wow. And how do you open up talking about that with someone else? Like, hey, do you ever just wonder what could have been all the time? No. And any show that I see, any media about timelines, oh, it's interesting. And so it's like opened my mind to more of that. And I used to have prophetic dreams as a child. And I don't anymore. And she talked about how sometimes growing up, you get, you condition yourself and you don't,
Right.
So I haven't, not since I was like younger than 10 for sure, but that in and of itself I thought was just some sort of like weird fluke that I made, like a memory I made up from when I was a kid or something. But
no, you've just forgotten it.
Yeah,
you could probably re-engage it if you really wanted to, would be my guess.
She mentioned doing that and I thought that sounds cool. But then that's me having an idea and I'm like, am I going to execute on that idea? Who gets it? And I love to wait for the perfect conditions.
Immediately where my brain went, I was like, it's going to be a business. That'll be your next business. Who knows?
Like, I'm sure there's a book about this out there that you could just read and immediately try. Was there anything else that she mentioned that you have felt like you have been pushing against this whole time that she kind of gave you that permission to stop?
So a big thing in mine is that the mother would come up a lot, like mother energy or like mothering of other people. And whenever I hear that, I'm immediately out. I'm like, no, thank you. I don't feel great about the tools I was given from my mother, so I don't want to be a mother for fear of doing it wrong. I know a lot of amazing women who are amazing mothers in spite of not receiving the right tools from their moms, and I think that that's so great. But permission to not be a mom is so great. Like any time any woman is like living passionately, authentically, and they're childless, I'm just like, wow, that's so cool, because I get scared. If I don't have a kid, will I regret it? Like, will I feel so lonely when I'm older? Like, what if, something happens to my husband? What if we don't, like, this is my second marriage. So I think like I wear my divorcee badge very proudly. I think it makes me very cool. And both of you are also part of this very cool club. It's just something really empowering about it. That's just like standing on business. Yeah. And the business is not being mistreated. But I think like what's going to happen if I don't have kids? So the more I talk to women who don't have kids, the more I'm just like, oh, it's okay. And so talking with Sarah about how much the mother was showing up, she said, let's just replace that with unconditional love. What if you just showed up unconditionally loving in all of your relationships, and it didn't have like the stigma of mothering?
I will tell you that I get that energy from you.
Mothering energy?
But as a friend.
Yeah, I love that. That makes
I'm
doing it right.
No. That you show up very genuinely caring of other people.
Yeah.
And that you have an amazing brain for detail and what's happening in people's lives, that you categorize and are able to like, I envy that, because my brain doesn't function that way. That you can just bring up what's happening in that person's life and remember all those details. And you know, everybody's like, anybody in her family that you've never even met, you know their names, you know where they fit in her family line, because you spent time with her and you catalog those in your brain. And it's really cool to watch you do that. And I'm like, that's really a gift and a talent that you have. And it makes people feel really like, wow, she cares about me and she sees me, and she really, it makes people feel important to you.
I love that,
and
because
you
like
do that really well.
Thank you. That's such a compliment. I've always really cared about people who I think make everybody feel like somebody. And so to hear that like I am doing that is really cool.
You definitely do that.
It's pretty shocking how much you remember too. Like, you can tell that you're present in those conversations versus like trying to think of the next thing to say. And I think that's also really difficult, because we all want to be heard and we all have this need to like say what we're thinking about a topic. But because you're so present when you're listening to people, you can recall it because you're actually listening. Yeah. Which is amazing.
I'm able to, I am very proud of my gift giving abilities. I love to give a gift, because I'm listening to you. I know what would make you happy. I love when I'm listening to my friends who are such givers. They're so selfless. They're people who they don't think anybody is listening. And I'm like going to give them this gift that like you still, a few different times I've had friends, get pregnant, and I'm like, I feel how you feel about it. We're excited. Great. But then some of them have expressed concerns about losing autonomy, becoming a mom. And so, I put together like a basket of things. I'm like, here's a bunch of stuff just for you. Everyone's going to give you stuff for the baby, but don't share this with the baby. This is for you. And I love doing that. And it's interesting to think about how you can shift. Just the word of mother makes me go, oh no, to just unconditional love. And it's just the way I show up for people. Like I think of people and I just want them to feel thought of and like seen and heard. Yeah. So I try to, a quote that's always resonated with me is like, be who you needed when you were younger. And that's just who I want to be. Yeah. It's just someone who is like, wow, all of these adults are crazy.
Yeah.
And you're really cool. So later that'll matter. I promise.
We had a moment in the gym early on where you told me how much you did not like the mirror. And I was shocked, honestly. I was shocked, confused, and hurt. And I have mirrors hanging around this whole place. And for my birthday last year, you spent hours, days even.
Layers of my skin.
Layers of your skin. Your DNA is all over this thing. Hot gluing teeny tiny mirrors around a large mirror to make a disco ball mirror for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good example of like something that I joke about a lot. Like, oh, I love a good mirror. But like, I really, really do genuinely love mirrors.
There are 2 in this room.
And it's a small ass room.
It's not a main bedroom even.
There's no reason to have 2 mirrors in this room. And one I can't even see out of because it's too high up. I love mirrors. I don't know. It's more than just the vanity of being a Leo. I think, honestly, I've always been really called to antique mirrors. Like, I just really love them. So anyway.
They're portals.
We have one mirror in our house, and I'm going to tell you, it was screwed to the wall above the mantle when we moved in. I didn't even bring it. It's the only one we have, and I cover it with a tapestry because I think it's calm now. It's too big.
But yeah, no, I just think it's a good testament of how not only are you listening and paying attention, but then you didn't just go buy a mirror from Amazon. You were like, no, I will make this mirror into the disco ball mirror of her dreams.
Yeah, because I didn't know if you knew this, but it's like heavy.
Yeah.
To hang it. So no frame I was finding was sufficient. I constructed a frame out of foam, like styrofoam toothpicks, and like a couple different fun glues. And I covered the whole thing in tape because I thought, well, what if it melts? I don't know. Yeah, so I was like, well, it's going to be cool and it's going to be light.
Yeah.
Because I figured at some point you would hang it up and you're not going to check for a stud. And I know that
Who has the time?
Well, I know that because you gave me those things from your closet.
Yeah.
That you tried to put up, and then you said, well, they didn't hold my clothes because you put them in the drywall. Yeah. And so now I have them, and I'm so grateful for them because we're going to hang them from our ceiling in our new bathroom, and that's where all my plants are going to hang from.
Oh, nice.
So, that was going to say,
you know, that's why when you are able to show up authentically in life, it makes things a lot easier. Right? Because I should never be in charge of any tedious things that I find stupid because I will never do them. And a stud finder falls directly into that category for me. I want to get this project completed. I have a beautiful idea. Mm-hmm. I'm going to
Physics be damned.
Physics be damned. I'm going to screw these suckers into this wall so I can get it moving, get it done.
Yeah.
That's a manifesting generator if I ever heard it. Just get it done.
And I bought hardware for that mirror to come over and hang it up, but I'm a manifestor, not a generator, and it was weeks, months even. And she said, I just hung this up. And I think, well, I made it light because I figured we were headed in this direction anyway, where I would finish 90% of something and you would put it on your wall as if it was 100%.
I mean, I couldn't stare at that more than like a day before. I was like, this must be hung up.
Yeah.
This must be my wall. Once I can visualize something in a space, the thought of having to wait, I have no patience.
It's held up pretty well. I like it.
Let's talk about your art when it comes to learning this new information. How are you feeling directionally? Has that changed since your reading with Sarah?
I felt really conflicted about what kind of artist I wanted to be before I met with Sarah. Like, I want to draw very cute things, but I also want them to be like a little bit offensive. Like, I want to draw like a cute little frog, maybe giving you the finger though. So like those two things in a space where you're trying to market yourself, they don't really go together. Like, I'd love to illustrate children's books, but your children can't read these books. So it felt like, do I have to have 2 different online presences, and how will I brand myself? And all of this felt so annoying to figure out. So like I was never going to get on the other side of it. And then I just realized after meeting with Sarah that like I'm the brand. It's just me. It's not like whatever clever name I can come up with that I feel like is, I love an alliteration. So I was like, I have to have, at first it was Shay Scribbles, and I do a lot more than scribbling. So I felt like I just really want this to be just me. And since my full birth name is Chandray, I thought, well, that's the brand. Because do you know other Chandrays? I'm going to say that you probably don't, because if it hasn't come up by now, you probably don't. So I thought that's going to be I'm just going to be myself, and I'm just going to make the kind of art I want to make. And I'm not going to I thought, oh, I have to be a children's book illustrator because the stuff I make is cute. I just didn't feel like that was me. I felt like I'm like driving in a direction of somewhere I didn't want to go. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to like start making whatever I want to make. And then over a period of years, I was able to develop some characters that I really liked. And after meeting with Sarah, I felt like I got permission to sort of like take that story further, because it was much bigger than just myself. Like my gift of orientation is going to come out through this story. I'm excited about it, because at first I thought, oh, this is going to be a children's book. And then I'm like, this is really verging on like graphic novel territory. So then I thought, who's the audience? Well, I'm the audience. So do I actually care? But it's been very cool to like build out that world. As someone who's made a lot of fan art of things, I think that's very cool and fun, and it allows you to connect with other people who you have shared interests with. But at the end of the day, if I'm making fan art for Bob's Burgers or Taylor Swift or other things, I'm like, okay, well, that's still that person's thing. I'm appreciating it with my art, but it's still theirs, and I want something to be mine. So this book I'm working on is going to be that, and I'm really excited about it. It's has to do with healing yourself, unblocking your chakras, and like embracing like more of a communal living, which as someone who's like pretty introverted is kind of wild. But I guess when you find the right people, it's not hard to be around people. I think I was around all the wrong people, so it's really.
I think you're writing Untamed Blossoms book, basically.
Really?
That's all the things technically we're doing here and standing for. So I think that's really beautiful, and we would love to promote it when it's done.
I'm excited. It all started with like the main character is a hedgehog, and I found this cement hedgehog at a big box store that was broken. And so it was only a couple bucks, and I glued it back together. Its nose is broken off. I'm like, well, no problem. As you know, I've got a lot of glues. So I'm ready to go. And I painted it. She's a rainbow hedgehog. And I'll give you like a spoiler of it's not a spoiler, just a teaser really. So she's a rainbow hedgehog, and she lives in a world that's just black and white. And so she wants to fit in more than anything. And so she makes a wish that she will fit in. And then overnight she loses all of her colors. And she has to get them back. She has to find her colors again and find herself. So that's TBD on how that happens. Because you can build an entire world, but writing that story is somehow like really the hard part.
I also think that, there's a lot of niche places for that, what you're talking about, like cute little animals flipping you the finger, right? Like
love it.
On t-shirts and on, like, it's an Etsy wonderland, right? Yes. And there's so many people who love that and will steal whatever you're doing if it's popular and do their own thing. But
Temu.
Man, there's a couple of designers even in Columbus here that I love their stuff because it's like that. It's some of it's really pretty and goddessy like, and then some of it's really on the edge, and I'm here for that. Like, I love it. And you did our logo for our business. You did the Untamed Blossoms logo. And I love it so much. And the main design was a moon with rays coming out of it, which is a divine feminine symbol. And you took it and made it into flowers. And it was just so beautiful and simple. And we love it so much. And I know that you did my daughter's logo for her business, which is also fantastic. She's in the hospice world, but
creating is so wild because when I was working on the things for your daughter's business, I was making stuff and I love this one. I love that one. And then I put together one near the end just to have like enough things that I felt like I was showing her, and she liked that thing. So it's just like goes to show you how sometimes like the art you love to make isn't always the art people love to see, or like the making of the art is good enough for me. I think learning that going to markets and trying to sell the stickers I've had printed or things like that, where I'm like, hey, would anyone like to buy my things? And if they didn't, I took it personally and I was sad. But I love making art. So I don't really care anymore about anybody wanting to buy it, which is kind of wild. But I will have to navigate how I move through that, in the future. To make a living off of being creative. In some way, someone will need to.
But I think it's also a good way to pivot to, I'm going to make art that makes me happy. I'm going to put it out there. I don't have to go to a market and make these into stickers and have this physical product. I can make my brand myself, represent myself, and the right people then will find me and ask of me to do things that may not be my cup of tea, but they will have found me through showing up authentically.
Yep.
And not creating in hopes that this is what someone else will like.
Exactly. Like I'm not going to be, I try not to follow design trends or things like that because I spend a lot of time trying to make things I thought people would want to buy at a market or a vendor event or all of the different names that those events have. And I'm just very happy to, I mean, you gave me such a platform for that to try it out. And we did a handful of events and I thought, wow, this is like great to know. But I just don't think long-term it's going to be for me. And talking to some of my other friends who are makers, Haley specifically does a lot of things, like a lot of events and things like that. And I love her for it.
Yeah.
I have some friends who make some other like hand, like soaps and things like that. And they do a lot of markets. And I think that that's great. And I also love that I recognize that that's not for me.
And I think too, like even before all this, you also made our Sober Besties logo.
Yeah.
Prior to that even, right? And what Sarah said is you are the brands, like you, all of the business of those logos came from me just liking you as a person.
Yeah.
Like,
that's true.
Like, yeah, I like your art. Of course. I had you commissioned a piece for you to make with a skeleton.
It's the first skeleton I've ever painted. It was so nice.
It was awesome. But I like your art, but I know you as a person and I've worked with you and in a professional capacity. So I knew what you were capable of as a human. That's why I went with you to do that art, right? So I think it's a really great lesson on showing up authentically and just being you, and the right people will find you.
Exactly. And I really resonate with artists who are just themselves. Like, I might not love their medium, or I might not also create with that medium. But yeah, I love people who are just themselves. I'm like, wow, this is great.
Do you feel like you're on sort of the edge of a cliff?
Yep.
Ready to jump?
Yeah, I'm gonna, I got my hair cut last week and I went in and I said, I want bangs. And I said, but before we move any further, I want you to know that I'm okay. I do want bangs though. I said, I'm ready for this.
Okay.
I really want to have bangs. And I think when people ask for bangs, you go, are you okay? And I'm ready for these bangs. So I got my hair cut. It looks great. I put my glasses on. I look in the mirror. I look at the person who cut my hair. I said, I think I'm going to go quit my job. And I didn't. But for a moment, I thought you could. And it felt really good. So I'm really back and forth with that. I think I'm just like one thing, good or bad, net neutral even, away from quitting my job. So if you'd like to just tell me I could, then I might.
You definitely can. I'm going to give you all the permission. I do believe that the universe supports you in that, it's time, and you really feel like it's time. And I know that we had this conversation about Amanda, is that it will show up financially, emotionally. The people will show up to support you. It's just if the intention is right there and it's within your authentic self's path, all the right things will show up to support you.
And I had to take a beat because I met Amanda in professional space and I worked with her and I reported to her. And when she decided to leave the place where we worked, I was so scared and I was worried that I only liked it because of her. Spoiler, I did. But when she left, it was what she needed to do. And I thought, I'm so excited for her. And then after she left, I really went into some flailing where I felt like just everything is different. And I knew it was going to be a delayed processor. And then I started sitting with what was left of our team, right? So the people that I've been working with for 5 or so years, and I'm looking and I there's no other way to say this, is that I'm looking around and it's 2 a.m. and they flip the bar lights on and I think, how am I still here? How am I still here is what I keep saying. It's like, you've outgrown this space. And I was afraid to admit it because I didn't want to do it because you did it. I thought, well, she's such a tastemaker, such an agent of change, that I thought, and you've made me change things even when I didn't want to. There have been times at work where you're like, everything has to be different now. And we start going to a new gym and I'm like, oh no, I don't like this. Everything is different. So I thought, am I doing this because I see how much freer you feel? I don't want it to just be that, but it has been a contributing factor because I've seen like people I care about live authentically and be happy. And it feels like the permission I needed.
But that's the thing also about having the right people around you, is we all should be influencing each other. We all should be pushing each other. And versus, I've had some toxic friendships in the past where someone would make me feel that way if I would have done what you just, mentioned, right? I would have maybe not done something in fear of them being like, oh my gosh, she just did this because that I would never have a friend like that now. And today, I would never, ever make a friendship with someone who made me feel that way. And I only want to be around people who push me and help me see what I can't see. Like we've mentioned a few times, sometimes you're too close to it to see it.
Yeah.
And I love you. And I hope that gave you permission to say, like, well, what does this mean for me? And what can I do? Because if I'm just doing this for funsies,
this isn't fun.
It's not so fun, but it is freeing. And I would hope that people would recognize that, like, well, if she can do it, I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel that in my bones.
And I've learned so much about, I feel like I know you so well. All of the one-on-one time we spent in the gym over the last 15 months, something like that. And every time I've listened to an episode of this, I've known the guest and I'm learning things about them that I didn't know before. I had no idea that you spent 27 years as a nurse. What?
Yep.
And I think it's so cool to learn about people. Like,
I think it's beautiful that both of you have learned things from each other and have grown, and not one time, at least that I know of, that you were calling each other out, right? It wasn't like you need to, right? Like it's not that energy. The energy of influence and being a good friend is just being in your authenticity and doing what's right for you. Sometimes sheds a light on, wow,
yeah,
you know, I don't want to do this if you're not here. Like this, the only reason I was here was because of our friendship. And now that that's gone, this is really not great for me. It wasn't a terrible, like, oh, Shay, this is awful people. She never once came to you and tried to influence what your perceptions were of those people or the place.
No, she would never.
Just landed in her own authentic space of, I have to get out. Like it's smothering me. And now you're realizing like, wow, I too, we were smothering together. We were under the same blanket and she's bailed. And now the weight of that blanket is only on me. And I'm like, whoa, I need to get out. Right. And she was like your lifeline. In some ways, you guys were each other's lifeline of air outside of the blanket, if I can continue with that analogy. But I think that that's a beautiful thing about friendship, sort of holding each other up and not judging and not preaching and just accepting people where they're at. And, you saying that you saw things about Amanda that she didn't know, right? But you had seen them, but you were like, oh, she didn't know that. That's cool that you are seeing that now. But you never also called her out on those things. It's not that energy, right? And I just think that's really beautiful.
And I think our friendship's been able to develop more now that we don't work together, because there was a period of time where up until when you left, I did report to you. So there was a little bit of that dynamic there where I didn't want to, I don't think I would ever call you out, but I wasn't ever going to say, you need to do this or you need to be this way, because to me, you were more of a mentor. So I don't tell you, you tell me. But then that probably put a lot on you, like a lot of responsibility, like, I have to guide you in the right direction. And after you left, I realized how much you held for me and our team and how much it was on you. Like none of us lived it as you, but I think that in a lot of capacities, you could reach out to any of the 6 of us who are still there from your team are like, wow, you really did hold a lot for everyone. And I can't believe that you did it for so long. Like, I'm shocked. And also, are you okay? Yes, you're much better now. I know that. So I don't really have to ask you if you're okay.
But, I think, too, knowing my human design, knowing I'm a manifesting generator, knowing some crazy things I learned from Sarah in a one-on-one session is that, like, I'm always going to figure it out. And I'm always going to be like, hey, I'm down to suffer through this as long as it means someone else is getting what they need, right? Like, I'm down for this. And what I realized through talking with her, literally the week after I left, was I think it's my wound is suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And that I'm always gonna pair that with being a manifesting generator is I will continue to suffer if I feel like it's for the right cause. And I had never figured out that maybe I'm the cause. Like maybe I'm the cause I should be fighting for and I shouldn't have to struggle so much. And then there was a guilt of, well, I don't want to leave you all. I love you all so much. I don't want to leave you.
Because you knew what you were holding for us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I did have this thought of like, but then they can make their own decisions. And I'm not shielding them from something that could help them grow and learn. So once I was able to pivot it away from, I will let them all down and they will potentially be miserable, to they can make the better decision for themselves. It felt better. Still scary, but better. is there anything else from your session with Sarah that we haven't touched on that you thought this is really important and maybe will help someone else decide that they too should really dig in here?
Something about there's a specific gait that had to do with taste. And I'm a pretty picky eater. And I think that, like, as someone who has meal prepped for me, you're very aware that all of the cottage cheese needs to be blended away. I shouldn't see it. So I'm really picky about eating. And I was talking with Sarah, and in different ways in my life, people have made me feel really difficult about that. Well, just order things how they come. Don't make any adjustments. Like, don't be a problem. And then as someone who worked briefly in the service industry, no, I'll just take whatever you'll give me. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry that you're having to work in the service industry. And now I just feel like I can be picky. Like, I'm allowed to be discerning. I wrote down, where did I? Yeah. You aren't difficult, you're discerning. And that's something that I learned. And what's really interesting is that I was sitting in my room having a virtual session with Sarah, and I closed my laptop and I went out into the kitchen, and my husband had a Blizzard from Dairy Queen made exactly the way I would want, and I didn't even ask it. It's like she said it was fine, and I left that room and he had it. It was in my kitchen. We don't live near Dairy Queen. So I was just like shocked. I'm like, there's no way he heard it and then went to get it and then came back. It's that he had it. And he's like, this is for you. It's in the freezer. I know you don't like when it gets melty. Thank you so much. And that was just like perfect. The universe being like, see, you're not difficult for the right people.
Yeah.
And that was really great.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Is find the right people.
Yeah.
Find the right people who cheerlead all of your little nuances, all of your little quirks and whatever, like your little nuanced things that you do that you might think is really weird and odd is most likely the things that the people who care about you most find the most endearing about you.
Yeah.
Don't hide it.
No, I love certain things about my friends, like that have little quirks, or the way, I mean, when Haley is standing on business, she'll throw her hands down and she's just ready to go. I love that. It's one of my favorite things about her. It's just when someone just reacts in such an authentic way I don't see anybody else do that. And so I'm like, I know that this is her and this is exactly how she feels about it. And if people are spending a lot of time around her, they might start to do that too. And I'm like, God, I love that. I love when that, like, someone's authenticity is like infectious. Yes.
We definitely have two more things we want to get to. One is, can you tell us some women that have shaped your life and how they've influenced you to be where you are today? And then we also want to be able to tell people where they can find you.
Oh, okay, yes. People who have influenced me. I think just like as a general group of people, I brought this up earlier, is just any childless women showing up like authentically or really passionately and not apologizing about not being a mom. People who are like, my end goal, the top of my mountain isn't to be a mom. And I think, wow, what are you doing with all of that? Because I know that moms pour their entire selves into their kids. And I think, with all of the self, what are you going to do with it? That's so exciting. So any woman who's doing that, I have friends that are voluntarily childless. And then someone I know from social media is Rachel Cargill. And she wrote a book called A Renaissance of Our Own that I think that everybody should listen to. I would love to finish it. I've listened to most of it. But it's just an amazing, really, really deep look at all of the things a woman has to give that aren't being a mom, which is just really interesting. So I would say an artist that I really like, that's someone who I first interacted with last year. Her name's Peggy Dean. And I took a weekend sort of like Christmas art boot camp holiday, like every 2 hours was a different session. And I had been on her email list for years, like I likely wanted a free calligraphy guide or something to get. That's usually, artists will offer free resources to then create an email list. You both probably know this. It's super new to me. So I did that, and then I'd been receiving her emails for years. She's, like, we're doing this class, or, learn this skill. And I thought, okay, that's cool. But then when I signed up for it and I like virtually interacted with her, I loved everything about her.
That's awesome.
Everything she was. And her website, like, something that it's so small and really not even relevant, but like she uses the colors lavender and orange together. And I think that's so cool. And it's one of my favorite color combinations. And I think I don't see it a lot. And I went to her website and that's like her color palette. And I'm like, I'm exactly where I need to be. Like, I love that so much. So I've taken a lot of classes from her and done a lot of, I'm part of something called The Flock, which is a group of entrepreneurs just wanting to learn how to monetize their art if they want, or do creative things together. And so that's been a really cool community of people. And then aside from Peggy and just childless women everywhere, I would say my friend Tori Rudolph is someone who I think has just always known what isn't and is for her. And whatever that means, she's just sticks to it. This doesn't feel right. But like, what if she could make a choice that would make everything better? She's like, but if it isn't me, it isn't me. And I think that that's so cool because I really feel like I've sacrificed things I've wanted for security and stability. And I look at her as someone who won't. And I think that's really cool. And you know her a little bit.
Yeah, she's a great human. Love her.
Yeah.
It's great to have that as an example around you of somebody who's really leaned into, this is who I am and I'm unapologetic about it.
Yeah. It's sometimes can be off-putting if you have a friend who, this isn't necessarily Tori, but just people out in the world who are more projectors, and they're telling you a lot about how they're feeling, and it can feel disarming if you're not ready to have those similar conversations about yourself or that same thing they're talking about.
Yeah.
Cool. And where can people find you if they want to check out your art?
My art Instagram is at chandre.art. And that's where I post most of the art that I make. My personal Instagram is private, and I recently posted art on there, and I thought I broke some sort of like big rule, but it turns out it doesn't matter, and it was fine. But yeah, most of my art is there, and I have some pages on like different art sites like Dribble that can be linked in the show notes.
Well, we have enjoyed this conversation immensely. We're so happy that you went to go see Sarah and it was impactful for you. And she continues to blow all of us away. So we're so happy that you had that experience with her, and we're so grateful to have you today.
Thank you. Can you guys do an episode about your hair and why it's always so perfect in every time of day, even in the gym? Can we talk about this? Can we talk about how someone came up to you in the gym and complimented your hair in your mid treadmill? You're just like, and they're like, you have beautiful hair.
It's perfect hair.
It's my mane, and it does get a lot of attention. She has an aura all of her own. It's not really about me. I literally had my hair straightened and curled one day meeting a friend. Like, I just curled it myself because I'd gone to bed with it wet and woke up and it was like Medusa. I had gotten into a Scrabble with like a rat's nest.
Yep.
And so I'm like, I'll just curl it real quick. That'll be a nice change of pace. She literally couldn't find me. She'd called me because I had my back to her, and with the loose curls, she couldn't find. So literally, it's how people find me in the world, is looking for my mane of hair. So
I love it.
I wish that I had done mine for today, but I feel like the new haircut with bangs and just like bed head.
I'm loving the bangs.
Amazing.
I'm loving the bangs. I'm loving it. I'm loving that you did it and jumped off the cliff. And I know that you're going to jump off more cliffs coming soon. And we're here to support you however we can.
Exactly.
Thank you. Just need a parachute.
Well, thanks for joining us this week. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Untamed Blossoms, and then give us a follow on Spotify. We would love if you would share this episode with someone that you feel like it would resonate with. So
thanks, everybody.
Until next
time.
Thanks
for coming.